Are you struggling to set up dynamic remarketing in Google Ads so that people who visit your shop and don't buy get shown exactly those products they viewed in an ad later on? In this video, I'll show you exactly how to set it up with Google Tag Manager. And I try to jump right into the most important stuff. So technical focus on Google Tag Manager, data layer, variables, triggers, tags, and so on. Ready? Let's go. Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Timo and I've got clicks in mind. I run Google Ads for online shops and I often see dynamic remarketing setups that don't work or are not set up properly. If that's the case for you, you really leave money on the table. Because even if you don't run dedicated remarketing campaigns, you most likely have performance max campaigns which make use of dynamic remarketing automatically. So this will also help you improve your performance max campaigns. Let's quickly look at what you need for that. So just to set the stage, with dynamic remarketing, people don't just see a generic ad, but it shows the user the exact products they viewed on your online shop. And to function properly, it uses your product feed and your website data. Also, as I said, the dynamic remarketing setup is good for dedicated remarketing campaigns as well as your performance max campaigns. And how this might look in the end is, we probably all know that you look at a product in an online shop, you end up not buying it, and later on you get shown exactly this product in an ad. For that to work, the technical setup needs to be clean. So what do you need for that? You need a working product feed in Google Merchant Center with the ID, the title, price, availability, and so on. Of course, you need to have the Google Tag Manager installed. Then what's very important, your website or your online shop needs to send data, events, and parameters into a thing called the data layer. This is where your shop can communicate that, for example, someone has added things to the cart and also which items and what's the value of them. And inside the data layer and your merchant center feeds, there are supposed to be product IDs. And in order for the dynamic remarketing to work, they have to match exactly so that in the end, the product which was added to cart can be shown in an ad. Just a quick example of how the data layer might look here out of the Google documentation. Here we see how it's supposed to look, what your shop sends into the data layer when, for example, someone adds something to cart. We have here the add to cart event, and then you see we have the value, and then we have an items array, so an object which contains all the items which were added to cart. And there we have the item ID, which is the most important thing here, and also many other parameters. So your data layer needs to look somewhat like that to be able to use the data later on in the Google Tag Manager. If this is not set up, you need to speak to a developer or maybe use a plugin or something like that. It depends which system you use for your online shop. I leave a link to the documentation from Google in the description because I would highly recommend using their naming conventions for the most common e-commerce events, such as view item, add to cart, begin checkout, and purchase. And now let's jump right into the Google Tag Manager for the step-by-step instructions. So now, assuming that the data layer is in place, we now start in the Google Tag Manager with creating data layer variables. So from the main page in Google Tag Manager, navigate to variables. And this is an already set up account, so I won't create a completely new variable, but just show you which variables you need for the dynamic remarketing setup. So you would create a new variable if you don't have one yet, and I show you the variable I already have. So we start with the items variable. For that, you want to create a new variable, name it, for example, data layer variable Ecommerce items, and create a variable from the type data layer variable. And then if you follow Google's instructions, this should be the reference to get exactly those values outside of the data layer. But make sure it can be that it's called something else for your data layer. That's completely fine. You just have to check how to reference the right variable here. In my case, it's ecommerce.items. So in the end, when someone adds something to cart, exactly the items will be inside of this variable. Then what we also need is the value variable. So you create a new variable. I scroll to my value variable. It's here. It's another data layer variable called Ecommerce value. This will have the value of the whole items. For example, if you purchase something, that will be your revenue, or if items are added to cart or removed from cart, this is the value, so the added prices from the products. So for the dynamic remarketing, those are the two variables you need. You see a lot more is going on here, but we focus on the most important things now. Let's move on to the trigger. For the trigger, I have here one remarketing trigger. I will put exactly the value of this trigger down in the description, because here you can create a trigger for every single e-commerce event. But if you want to do it smart, and of course we want to, you can create just one trigger, which triggers for every e-commerce event in the data layer, which is relevant for the dynamic remarketing. And how you do that is you create a trigger by the type of a custom event. So the event which is pushed in the data layer. And here we can use the regex matching. And I will put exactly the value from this down there. What this does eventually is this will trigger for every e-commerce event which is relevant. So view item list, view search results, add to cart, and purchase. If you want to, you can add other events here, but those are the most important ones. And now we go on creating the Google Ads remarketing tag. So navigate to tags, and you will have to add a new tag. I will navigate to mine. And you have to create a tag from the type Google Ads remarketing. So here, Google Ads remarketing. And there you just have to fill in a few fields starting with your Google Ads conversion ID. If you don't know where you find it, it's just in the conversion settings inside your Google Ads account. And then, which is most important, is this checkbox here, send dynamic remarketing event data. Here you fill in one variable. You can just find it here. If you type for event, I already have it in. This will just fill in the event, so Google knows was the product already added to cart or was it just viewed. Then the second one is we add our data layer e-commerce value variable we just created. And the third one are the e-commerce items. So we just fill in here our variable for the e-commerce items. And then scrolling down, of course, you have to add the triggers. Here, I use two triggers, one on all pages. So to make sure to capture all the page views, and additionally add your remarketing trigger here as well. So it will also trigger again for every e-commerce event, and then just hit save. So, and after setting it up, of course, next step is testing and debugging. So go to preview, open your URL you set this up for. This might be grayed out now. And let's look at what it's doing. So you will now just see the Google Tag Assistant, and I will trigger some e-commerce events. Let's go real quick. Let's click through that online shop here and add it to cart. And on your end, we see that we have, for example, this view item list event where the Google Ads dynamic remarketing tag was fired. We can click into that event, into that tag. We can see that our e-commerce items variable and the value variable was also sent with the tag. So everything looks good here. We can scroll up. I can see an add to cart event, and we see the dynamic remarketing tag was fired as well. So everything looks fine from my end here. One important thing I can't leave unmentioned, and this is the data privacy or consent settings, because I'm based in Germany, so this is very highly relevant here. But of course, dynamic remarketing is personalized advertising. So depending on your country, you usually need explicit consent before you're allowed to fire the remarketing tags. With the Google Consent mode, this is a little bit different because they adapt exactly to the consent which was given. So in my setups, I use the Google Consent mode version 2 and a GDPR compliant cookie banner, so that only when the user accepts the cookies, the remarketing tags actually saves the audiences. This is also very important to set up, because if that's not working correctly, Google might just not use your remarketing data. And of course, the disclaimer, this is not legal advice, so please seek a data privacy expert if you have any questions on that. And now you know how to set up dynamic remarketing. To sum it up, you need a working merchant center feed and a data layer where the IDs exactly match. Then you need to trigger your remarketing tag with every relevant e-commerce event and send over the items variable and some other variables which might be relevant. And then just test it with Google Tag Assistant to see if it's all working. If you liked the video and you found it helpful, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel for more free videos like these. Also leave a comment if you have any questions on this, and if you want me to give your Google Ads account a 10-minute reality check, check out the link in the description. See you in my next video. Until then, work smart with clicks in mind.